Welcome to the Hire Truckers Podcast, where we interview experts in driver recruiting. We provide industry insights, marketing trends, and motivation to help you level up your recruiting game. Welcome to the Hire Truckers Podcast. I'm your host, Craddock, and today I'm super excited. We have Kimberly DeBoe with Dynamic Transit Company. I'm extra excited about the conversation today just because she has over 20 years HR experience, and 19 of that is outside of the transportation industry. And she's hired anyone from janitors all the way up to the CFO. And so we're going to dive into just her strategies and what she's learned from being outside the industry and jumping into the industry. So welcome, Kimberly.
Thank you.
So the first thing I want to dive into is that just experience all the way from janitors to that CFO you hired. And so how, you've been in the industry about a year, but working outside of the industry, like how has that helped you in this role?
I think something that it's not always recognized in the transportation industry by those that have been in it for a long time is that recruiting is the same across many industries. It's got the same kind of ebbs and flows. It's got the same kind of requirements. You do the same kind of processes. There are basics. There's gray areas depending on what you're hiring for. So there's a little bit of change here and there depending on whether it's a trucker or a janitor or warehouse worker. There's different things different ways to approach it, but it all has the same baseline process. And I think that's something that is really important for everyone to understand. Recruiting does involve a process, and it's not just about waiting for people to apply. It's about searching and sourcing and reaching out and trying to figure out the best way to attract the people that you're trying to attract.
And so what have you kind of brought in as you've just brought in, new ideas to Dynamic Transit? Is there anything specifically like you've kind of brought into the process or different vendors or things like that?
Really, I think more of a streamline process, and not that there wasn't a process, but more of this is how recruiting is done, not just answering the phones all day or calling drivers all day. There's more to it. People forget about the back end side of recruiting, the sourcing and the analytics and the decision making on who are we going to use or how are we going to reach these people. Those things are forgotten about. Drivers are very forward and they're always looking for new jobs. So there's never really a huge shortage of applications, but you don't want applications. You want to focus on quality as well. And so I think those are the two things that I've focused on since I've been here is the quality over quantity. And then, doing more than just being a phone answerer.
So it sounds like you ask your recruiters to be a little more proactive.
Correct. Yes.
That's awesome.
And it helps. Being proactive is always beneficial no matter what you're doing anyway, but being proactive helps with maintaining and managing the applicant flow.
And so that's already kind of taken us into the section around marketing trends. Mm-hmm. And so what have you seen shift with job boards? That's one of the things in our pre-call that came up.
So something I've noticed, just since I've been here, every company you use different job boards, different applicant tracking systems who feed and are scraped by different job boards. And Indeed is huge for everyone, but it's not necessarily the best for the industry, especially for truck drivers. The truck driving application is so different that, Indeed may not always be the best route to go to attract drivers. Your mechanics or your office personnel, sure. But for drivers, something that everyone else uses, like Indeed, is not necessarily going to be the same thing that works to attract the drivers. Mm-hmm. And so that's been really something that I've noticed. One of the huge things that works really well is social media. And the drivers love Facebook and Instagram and making comments and sharing their opinions. And then, just getting that information, getting your brand out there so people know, because drivers have a lot of opinions about the industry and what they do, and they look to see what businesses and what companies match their values that they are looking for.
And so how are you seeing drivers leverage Facebook and Instagram? And then how are you, as a recruiter, speaking to them where they are and leveraging that as a recruiting department?
we have a marketing manager who I work really closely with, and she does a really good job of putting out content that attracts the attention, that gets them to respond in things that they're interested in. So our ads are not just about, come work for Dynamic, we're so great. We have Facebook posts and social media posts that are about things like, show me a picture of your pet that rides with you, or we just recently did one about when we were younger and we used to do the whole honk your horn thing to the semis, and do you guys still do that? And so just those kind of things that they interact with, just so we can get our name out there. And then once the name's out there, then people start asking more questions. So they respond to whatever question is on that post. And then they also ask more questions about us, which is what's helpful. We don't just say, let me tell you about Dynamic. We ask them about things that they would be interested in to get them engaged in our post and in our company.
That's awesome. So what was the answer? So as a kid, I would go up and down the road,
yes.
Doing this out the window sometimes, or in the window on every road trip, even before I got into transportation. And so what was the answer?
So a lot of the drivers were saying that they miss that they don't see that as much as they used to, and they'd love it if people would do it. And if they see anyone do it, they do go ahead and honk their horn, but it just is not as much as they used to before. Because I did too. When we were on road trips as kids, I was always putting my arm out the door and out the window and waiting for them to honk. It was part of the trip. It was a fun part of the trip.
See, I haven't done that with my 4-year-old. I don't know why, but I need to incorporate that again, for safety reasons, when traffic is very spread out and all that. But yeah, that's awesome. I could see how drivers would engage with that. And so with that, are you trying to drive them directly? Like, do you wait until they ask something about Dynamic before you drive them into the recruiting conversation? Or are you proactive sometimes as well with people that follow your pages?
We are proactive, and then people tend to, once they see something like that, they'll show us that they're interested. So we do get a lot of leads. Most of our leads come from the social media pages. So those types of posts are what engages them to come and ask us questions. So they'll fill out a form, and then we end up calling them, and we end up talking more about our business and what we can offer and what they're looking for, and if we can meet those needs and together.
Mm-hmm. So are you running, this is just my marketing brain kicking in. So are you running those things like the honk the horn thing as ads, or is that just the organic?
That's just an organic post. Mm-hmm.
Okay.
We do have a couple ads, but those are just organic that do bring a lot of interest.
Mm-hmm. I've never even, we've never tried it. We're always trying to think of creative ideas, but I wonder if you just put like something like the honk the horn thing as a sponsored ad, because you're going to get, infinitely more traffic. Yes. And then if that would drive leads similarly, because, people are, drivers can get tired of just seeing the image of the truck and, come work for us. Here's our, home time and sign-on bonus or whatever it is. And, yeah, it's an interesting, I really like that approach. So do you leverage like going in to other like Facebook groups, like job groups, or is this all just with your internal brand?
It's just all with our internal brand. And I think one of the things that makes us stand out as a company is our equipment, and people love those Peterbilts. And we have the 389s, and they're the long nose, and people are interested in that. And so we do have a sponsored ad that we have one of our recruiters walking through the truck and saying, this is what it looks like on the outside. This is what it looks like on the inside. Come work with us because we know you want to be in this truck. And so there are things like that we do that just get their attention, and people like the way they look. Mm-hmm. And I think that is a huge draw for us. It may not be necessarily be the reason that they come and work for us, but it is the reason that they call us or they show interest in us, is because of our equipment.
That's awesome. Yeah. I love the way those trucks look. So how important are reviews and comments like around your brand that you see online? And does your team have any emphasis on reviews and comments?
The comments, yes. Well, the reviews as well, yes. But I think the most important part between the two, between the reviews and the comments, I would say the comments are more important. I make a point of interacting with every comment that is on there. Let me take that back. I interact with most of the comments on Facebook. If they require a question being answered, or if it's something like, I've been driving for this long and I have this many miles, I'll at least say congratulations. But we don't always engage with everyone because there are some comments. The problem with social media is that it gives people courage to say and do whatever they want to. And so there's not always 100% positive comments. Mm-hmm. However, we do leave some of those out there. People have their opinions and we want to give them the full look of what we are. We do not try to make it look like we are this rainbow sunshine company and nothing ever goes wrong. So we do leave some of those things out there. Facebook knocks off things that use cuss words and things like that are inappropriate, but we do make sure that we engage with all the comments. The reviews, not always, but we do get engaged with comments daily.
Yeah, I agree. I think when there's no negative comments, because like we all have things we're frustrated about, it doesn't matter how well your operations is. There's just, how well you do operations. There's so many things outside of your control with where they're dropping off freight or equipment issues, just things happen. And so I think that by having those on there, and then you'll have, a lot of times you'll have other drivers jump in there and say, well,
that's not the case.
Right? Yeah, that hasn't been my experience.
Yes.
And I think that's where, the fleets that really look out for their drivers, that comes up because the drivers go to bat on some of those comments.
They do. And I think it also shows transparency for the company. To me, I would trust a company more if I know that they are 4 stars rather than 5, because 5 would make me a little bit nervous. Like, really, everybody loves it there? I really don't think that's the case. So, you kind of let people speak their piece and just kind of see where it goes. Even sometimes, not all the time, sometimes bad press is good press. Mm-hmm. Because like you said, it leads those other drivers there, some of our current drivers, to say, well, that's not what happened to me, or I've been here for 5 years and I've never had that experience. So
today's sponsor. Do you hire truck drivers in hard to fill areas, or do you need help creating efficiency in your recruiting department? You're not alone. With 50 plus years experience, TruckingClick specializes in data-driven strategies, industry-leading customer experience, and custom solutions that'll get you to your goal. TruckingClicks is your go-to place for high-quality, direct leads at scale. Visit truckingclicks.com or call 512-982-0816 today. So the next thing I wanted to dive into, Kimberly, is how are you working with ops to improve retention?
So actually, we recently just amped up a retention. It's been a huge focus because we were losing drivers, and really it's about partnership and collaboration and saying to operations, what things should we say, what things shouldn't we say. We don't want to tell the candidate something and then they walk in the door and it's something completely different. So what is the story that we need to tell that aligns with what actually goes on here? And then what do we need to do after to touch these people once they've started, to ensure that, just check in, give them an opportunity to tell anybody about what's going on. So if they don't feel comfortable telling their driver manager, can they reach out to recruiting and say, hey, I've got this issue. We also have a person who his title is driver relations manager. So he also, his focus is just kind of reaching out, making sure they have everything they're needing, that they're learning what they need to learn, that they don't have any issues. So we have a lot of drivers we're reefer, and we have drivers that haven't had reefer experience. And so it's a change when they come over. And so just kind of helping them with that transition as well. We want to make sure that there is a focus all around to not just hire drivers, but to keep drivers.
Yeah, I think the stat is like most turnover happens in the first 90 to 100 days on average. Mm-hmm. And like with drivers and yeah, I've seen some data that's like double the retention just by, touching them once a week. And like you said, like letting them have that phone number or an easy place to voice complaints. And one of the things is if you open up the door for complaints, you have to answer those.
Yes. Yeah.
Answer those and just get them a response.
And something I noticed that is very much industry specific is that truck drivers will leave a company if something's not the way they want it to be. They will leave a company within a day, within a month. It's not something where they feel like they have to stay. And so it's very important to have that transparency and then to also tell the story that matches what is actually going to happen when they get here.
Yeah, one of our core values at our company is radical honesty.
Yes.
And I think in the driver context, the fleets that I've seen, like you guys, that just here's the good, here's the bad, and put an emphasis on that rather than saying,
Right.
yeah, you're going to be home all the time
Right.
and it's going to be perfect. We never have equipment issues. Our everything's perfect.
Right.
You're never going to be stuck anywhere. You're never going to have challenges getting your hours in or parking.
Right.
I think getting ahead, like in this particular role, like here's exactly what you're going to encounter, like the frustrations that we've had other drivers say, and then here's how we remedy it. And I think it also helps like in the close rate in the recruiting process too, just because they're like, wow, if they're honest about this, that could drive me away. They're going to actually be helpful when I come on. So I love that.
And there's also, there's operations here with us in the building where the recruiting team is. So when we get those questions that we may not know the details to, we will stand up and just say, hey, this driver's asking me this. Is that something that we would possibly do or not do? Or what do we need to do? Because we really want to make sure we are upfront with them and honest about what goes on here.
That's awesome that they're in the same space, that you can have those collaborative conversations. What advice do you have to peers in the industry? So the primary audience that we have for this show is, typically, 200 plus truck fleets, a lot of 500 plus truck fleets, and people in the director of recruiting role, and all the way up to executive role, and then down to recruiters, and then also just people that are interested in the industry. But specifically for other, peers in your role, what advice would you have for them? Do you have for them?
I think the biggest thing that I would say is that you have to step away from the thought process that you just have to fill your trucks. Because when you're hiring for quality instead of quantity, you will fill your trucks. There's going to be a little dip before you get there, but you will fill your trucks and then they'll stay filled. And you won't find that you have that constant rotation. So I think that's one of the biggest things, is not so much focus on hurry up and fill the trucks, but more focus on let's hire the quality drivers that are going to stay with us.
Mm-hmm. And so what makes a quality driver? Because I've heard you say that a few different times. Like, what's your definition of a quality driver?
I think it's different at every company. Every company has different minimum qualifications that they have. And so one of the things that we do for our team is that we have those people that meet the minimum qualifications, but we want people, and that's like if you're on a grading scale from an A to a F, meeting the qualifications is like a C. And we would like those B and A drivers that are just a tad bit more than what the minimum qualifications are. And so to us, that's what quality means, is that you're not just meeting the qualifications, the minimum qualifications, you're exceeding them.
So the next section I wanted to dive into, which I'm excited about based on your pre-call and chatting with Ginger, is what are you reading right now or listening to?
Right now, actually just started reading. It's a FranklinCovey book called Get Better. Mm-hmm. It's practices to build effective relationships at work. And I am a certified FranklinCovey trainer, and so I have access to FranklinCovey books, and that's one of the trainings I have. But there's also a book as well, and it actually is pretty interesting read about building relationships. Relationships at work are important. You don't have to be best friends with everyone, and in the industry, there's a lot of, we're a family company, and that's not necessarily you're not family with them either. But you do need to make sure that there is a relationship built, and that you are working with and not against the people that you work with.
Mm-hmm.
And in that, and we talked about this earlier, in that emotional intelligence is very important. You have to be willing to learn. You have to be open to conversations. You have to be open to conflict as well, because not all conflict is bad. And you have to be able to take feedback and grow and learn from that feedback, and then be able to give feedback in a way that people will accept it and grow and learn as well.
Mm-hmm. So what led you to kind of go down the path of studying, becoming a FranklinCovey coach and like focusing so much on emotional intelligence and things like that?
I think years ago, I was in retail, and the CEO of the company I worked for sent us all to 7 Habits training. And then once I had that training, then I really got interested in what was going on. And he was like, well, then you become an instructor and learn how to train everyone else about this. And then I've had jobs since then that I've also done other FranklinCovey trainings in. And being an instructor, then you also get to go to programs every year or two and learn more things about the programs that they have coming out. And I've always felt like empathy and listening and things that they coach a lot and FranklinCovey are important in work as well as in your personal life. Those things bleed over, and it's very important to be able to interact with people and work well with people. You can't get your job done if you don't have those soft skills too.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, early in my career and in my relationship, my marriage, we've been married for 13 years and also been in trucking, coincidentally, about 13 years. And in both of those, like early in my career, I avoided conflict, didn't like conflict, and thought it was kind of negative when it was on my teams. And when there was tension in meetings, I viewed that as bad. Where my perspective now is completely different. Like,
yes,
if we don't have some conflict, then something's wrong, and like we're not talking, like bringing things to the forefront. And I know things are building.
It's not true if everybody gets along or agrees with everything that everyone else says, something's not right. Because everybody has opinions, and it's okay. Sometimes you don't have to share all of it, but yes, there should be open conversations, and there should be a work environment where people are not afraid to say, here's what I think, and be comfortable with that and not think there's any repercussions.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So what books, like, it sounds like you've read, a decent amount, like a good amount on this topic, and have learned a lot in terms of empathy and conflict and things like that. So what other books, like, would you recommend or have you read that you really enjoyed?
Anything by, and I'm not going to pronounce his last name right, but Simon Sinek.
Mm-hmm.
His thing is emotional intelligence, and that's really anything that he does is really good, or I enjoy. Also, anything that FranklinCovey says, this is like, how Oprah has her books, and anything that the FranklinCovey that I picked up in those trainings that says, anything about, listening, active listening, and paying attention to behaviors and empathy, those type of things, I think are those soft skills that people ignore at work, but are actually very important at work.
Mm-hmm. How has, like, with that emotional intelligence knowledge and training, how has that helped you come in and kind of hit the ground running as you've come into dynamic transit and into the transportation industry over the last year?
I think one of the huge things is that drivers want to be heard, and not a lot of people listen. And so just kind of stepping back and saying, what is it that you're looking for? How can I help you? It's a huge thing. And I think that's been something that's helped me a lot, is just how can I help, regardless of what it is or what you're doing, whether it's internal with operations or safety or whatever, or with the drivers on the outside. It's how can I help make this experience better? And when you approach things from that angle, then it makes your job easier and makes your results more effective.
The one thing I struggle with on that is I'll ask, like, how can I make this better? And then when I notice like a supporting phrase and I'll dive into it too quickly, I'll be like, oh yes. And then here's my agenda. Like, let's do this. Rather than something I've been trying to practice recently, sometimes successful, sometimes not, is asking a couple follow-up questions after that first question. So how can I help you? And then keep diving in. And even when you think you know it, that's something I heard recently. I think it was on an Ed Milet podcast. But it was even when you think you know what they're trying to say, like ask 2 or 3 more questions or say, Here, what I'm hearing is this, this, and this, and you'll almost always get something different.
Yes.
And Ginger and I were actually traveling, visiting clients in Tennessee and Alabama last week. And I used that a couple different times and just to try to listen better. And man, it was amazing. Like my assumptions and what I was about to jump on and pounce on, oh yeah, we should go this route. I got, way better, more constructive information on how we could actually help the fleet by, just not assuming, and I haven't yet applied that like in my marriage relationship with Lauren, but
you should.
Like that. Yeah, that'd be really good. I mean, I have gotten better over the years.
You just ask, how can I help? And then shush, and then listen. And then once you hear it, because a lot of times people have some idea of how they want it to get done. They just need help making it come to fruition. And so if you say, how can I help? And you genuinely mean it, then you'll be quiet and listen. And then they'll give you all the cues all the things that they need. And even if they need more information, they'll give you that too. If you just listen, they may not say it directly, but you still just have to listen. And I think that's one of the biggest things that I learned as a FranklinCovey trainer, and just that I apply everywhere, is that act of listening, because it's human nature for us to listen to respond instead of listening to actually help or assist. We really just want the next person to shut up so we can say what we have to say. And it's hard to train yourself to not do that. But it really is beneficial, and it'll help you be a better person in general, but it'll help you be a better person at work when you are a better teammate, a better employee, when you pause and actually listen.
Mm-hmm. So I know one thing is actively listening and, nodding and engaging and things like that. Is there also an importance, like, do you try to say back to people like your understanding of it? Or because where I'm going with this is like with my wife, she's like, I feel like you didn't hear me. And I'm like, I heard you. Like, I was sitting here listening. But there's obviously a disconnect, right? Like I'm not listening well in some way. Like that's, listening well is also active, and then how I respond with my words. And so is there also a level of like repeating it back? Like here's what I heard. And how does that apply to drivers? Like where you're stating back to them what they've said?
Yes, because it seems corny at first. The first time I ever went to a active listening training and they said, repeat what you heard. I'm like, that is the dumbest thing I've ever heard. However, my attention span is really short, and it's gotten shorter in this technology age where everything is done in 30 seconds. And so I don't always. I hear it, but I don't always listen. And so it is helpful when you say, especially when you're not paying attention, complete attention, when you say, so this is what I heard. And then they can say, no, that's not it. Or yeah, that's it. And so it seems corny, but it is actually very helpful to repeat back your interpretation of what they were talking about, to ensure that you guys are on the same page. Because you can listen to a whole conversation. Someone talked to you for 20 minutes and you did not get what they were saying. And you could say, so this is it? And they'll be like, no, that's not what I was talking about at all. And I'm like, crap. I do it with my husband all the time. I'm like, oh, well, that's what I heard. That's what I heard. I'm sorry. Can you help me get where you're at? So yeah, with the drivers, a lot of them will say something and then it'll take them down a rabbit hole to somewhere else. And 15, 20 minutes later, you're like, so our issue was you're not getting paid when you're not rolling. And that was it. And so it's just like, after I hear about you stopping and then you had to wait and then you had to do this and then this happened and this, let's go back to the beginning. You want to know how many miles we have because you don't get paid unless those wheels are turning. And that's pretty much it. Or how long do you have to wait when you dock, or how long? Those kind of things are the questions that we get, but it takes a minute to get there because there's all these experiences that they've had that fall into that. And when people are talking, their brain goes, and then they're like, yeah, and then this, and then this, and then this. So you have to repeat back to them because you'll get lost as well.
Mm-hmm.
And I personally will stop listening, but not all the time, but I listen for keywords, but it's hard to stay focused when people go down that rabbit hole.
Like with your recruiting team specifically. So your recruiters coming into Dynamic, how have you trained them on these principles, or what principles have you focused on, like relative to emotional intelligence, on their conversations with drivers?
One of the big things is leading the conversation, because everyone wants to tell their story. When you ask questions, you ask leading questions that'll get you to specific answers that we're looking for to see if they meet the qualifications that we have. And then, if you get off track, kind of lead them back. Lead the conversation is the most important thing. As a recruiter, you have to lead their conversation. You can't be on the phone with them for 45 minutes and not get anywhere. And then, at the end of the conversation, find out they don't even live in the hiring area. So those are the kind of, like, get the good things out at the beginning, lead the conversation, let them know what we're offering. Recruiting is very much a sales job. You are selling that position. So you have to speak to the benefits of the position and what we're offering, so that then that allows them to say, yes, that's what I'm looking for, or no, it's not what I'm looking for.
I like that. So leading questions towards qualifications, and then also just finding out if it's a good fit for what their personal goals are.
Yep.
That's neat. I love the book ideas. I'm such a nerd.
Same.
I love mine is mostly listening nowadays.
Mm-hmm.
I get about an audiobook in a week or so. But yeah, I love it. Is there anything else that I should have asked that you think would be constructive for some of your peers in the industry, or anything else, or just anything else you want to touch on?
I think one of the biggest things that I learned coming into this industry, unlike any industry that I've worked in, marketing, social work, retail, any of the other industries I've worked in, brokerage, as in like Wells Fargo, not like brokerage, transportation brokerage. But I think one of the things that I've picked up on is that people in the transportation industry believe that they are different from everyone else in every other industry, and there is no industry like the transportation industry. And although that is correct in some ways, there are things that are the same regardless of what industry you're in. Recruiting is one of those things. HR is one of those things. Marketing is one of those things. So there are things that are continuous across different industries, and transportation industry is not much different than any other industry in those senses. The candidates are different. Some of the way that recruiting is done is a little different as far as the information that you gauge and some of the questions that you can ask. But outside of that, it's not that much different. And I think it's okay to say that someone who is not from the transportation industry can be successful in the transportation industry. So I think that's a big thing.
Yeah. And as the industry continues to grow and just the need for drivers, like we need more people, crossing over into this industry. So
right.
I think that might be encouraging for some listeners that are thinking, like, would I get into, I have an HR background. Should I get into recruiting in transportation? Because a lot of what we're talking about, it's just different jargon and different language that people may not have heard. And so I think it can seem scary, because I remember when I got into the industry 13 years or so ago, and I was like, what the heck is an owner operator? Right. Like, what is like reefer? Like, what are we talking about? Like, I mean, there were so many terms that I didn't know. And so now, like, even when we bring somebody on our team now that has marketing experience but may not have it in the industry, like, we'll spend a lot of time in the first few weeks just being like, here are 30 terms you may not know. And but once you get the lingo, I love what you said. It's kind of on the marketing side too, and job marketing. It's not unlike other employment and industries. And the difference is, like you said, just some of the vendors, some of the applicant tracking systems, things like that are a little bit different. Some of the compliance and legal stuff, like for insurance reasons and and things like that. When, sometimes, some of the people I'm talking to on the show are driving 60, 70,000 pounds of flammable liquid, and, you have to have a lot of rules. And,
Right.
and I'm just encouraged with what all the industry's done to just improve safety. And again, like even with you guys, like you're like, I'm not focusing on the minimum qualification. Like we're getting people as experienced as possible as possible in our trucks. And yeah, so I love it. And I love your passion when you get to talking about just like, I heard it a couple of times in this interview. And like the first time was like when you talk about emotional intelligence, like you lit up in the FranklinCovey stuff. And then also just the passion around just like, look, like this is HR and recruiting. It's not like just because I'm from outside the industry doesn't mean I don't, people can't do it and that you don't understand it. So, yeah, I just appreciate the enthusiasm, and I just thank you for your time today. I think we added a lot of value just to the industry as people listen in and continue to learn. So I know it took us a couple times to get you on, but I'm
so
super excited. And as I said, some of the best episodes come when we had to wait. I think this is a really good one. And so I appreciate you rescheduling with me a couple times. And
thank you for being so flexible
and getting rolling. Well, Ginger kept on telling me, she's like, this is going to be awesome. Like you have to talk to Kimberly. And so, yeah, super glad we had you on today, and look forward to staying connected.
So fun fact, like my second week here, Ginger called me, and I had not been in the industry very long. And I was like, I have no idea. I can't tell you whether I need this service or not. I don't know. I just started. I don't even know what I'm doing. And she was so nice. She said, even if you don't use this service, let me tell you, you can call me anytime and ask me any questions about the industry, and I will help you. And I thought that was the nicest thing, because was not my experience when I first started. And I'm like, this is a vendor who is not even working with me, and she's not going to get anything out of this relationship if I don't do this. But she was so kind, and I really appreciate that. And I believed her that she would give me, and if I called her anytime and said, what is this, she would help me. So I really appreciate that.
I'm stuck on the side of the road. Will you come help me? Yes.
No, she does seem like that kind of person. Yes.
Yeah. So Ginger is my mom. Like that's the same last name. And so and it's been fun working together. She came in to the industry about 3 years ago and joined Craddock Holdings, like our parent company. And yeah, but her brand is like find joy in the journey. And she has a couple different things, like a coaching business, like expanding women in leadership. And she's also, Colby certified, like as far as like does some coaching, and it's cognitive personality traits. So like you're working, like how you work. So like I lead as a fact finder. That's why I have all these notes and questions. And then I go into quick start, and then I go into the other things. So, but yeah, she's genuinely like that. And it's just so funny. Like even leading with like she doesn't care about like money or finances necessarily. Like she just doesn't, like, it's just not how she's wired. She'll never think that way, but it really fits our brand just in what we're doing. Cause I think even this podcast, like I lose money on producing this, but the thought is like, what do we, like, if we add value to the industry and create community, like that'll reflect back on our brand. Cause like you said, you're not even, doing business with us, like some of the fleets that are on the show and then I also think just people need community, and especially in a digital world, and just being connected. And so I appreciate you coming on today, and Ginger will be encouraged, because another thing is she, I know this took us on a tangent, but tangents are good sometimes.
Okay.
So she like reaching out to people is really hard for her, like making calls. And she's changed in that. And like if she doesn't know people, so that's kind of cool. Cause when we started, that would have been about when we started, when she started reaching out and transitioned more from like managing our client success department into more outbound sales and reaching out to people. And so she'll yeah, she'll be encouraged by that. Just
She was
that
a
connection.
huge encouragement to me and was like, you're going to be able to do this. Like I could hear the coach in her, and she was very much, you've got this. Don't worry. It's going to be okay. And I'll help you if you need it. And I was like, wow, okay. Okay.
She means it. Take her up on it.
Yep.
Well, thank you again for your time today, Kimberly. And I look forward to chatting again later.
All right. Talk to you later.
Thank you for joining us today. Our goal with the Hire Truckers podcast is to provide industry insights, marketing trends, and motivation to level up your recruiting game. If we added value, take a few seconds to share this with your network. Have a great week.